Good morning, members. So I want to talk about making shapes because we've been making free-form frames. We did a rectangle and I showed you how to manually shape the rectangle, but now I want to talk about what else you can use to help you make shapes. So certainly we know that I'm always pointing you to the Home Depot or the hardware store, excuse me, and because they sell a gazillion dowels. These are usually about 3 feet long. They come in a ton of different diameters, and I just cut them down to about 3 inches. And then I have, a beautiful set of dowels that I can use. And I also go to the plumbing section of the hardware store, and you know that I get these PVC pipes. They're all pre-measured, 1.5 inch, 2-inch diameters. They're very sturdy, they're inexpensive, they're already cut to this couple of inches here, and you can get them again in a bunch of different diameters. They're plumbing parts, so from the Home Depot, and that'll help you make some round shapes. But now let's talk about squares. A little bit harder to form, so everyone's always, I am always also manually forming them for my square and rectangle stones. By the way, large nails are also really good dowels. I forgot to show that. So let's talk about some other things that you can use for square dowels. Also in the hardware store, you can, go get 1x1 dowels that are square just as easily as you can get them round. The other thing you can do if you're an epoxy artist is that you can make your own dowels and shapes. I like to use, they sell these little molds. I mean, don't go crazy. If you don't already have this, don't do this just to make. Go to the hardware store and buy the wooden ones. But if you have this stuff already, there's some molds that are absolute square and rectangle shapes already. So you can just pour them. And I did, not to make jewelry or anything, but just to make yourself shapes for dowels. So I could use this in this direction for a little rectangle for an earring. I could use it in this direction to form my wire for a square stone or a small rectangle stone, right? I've made them in ovals so that you're not putting pressure up against your stone. You can just shape around these little guys to help you get the initial shapes. So just some ideas for you, but in particular these rectangles are great, and making squares out of these epoxies are great. Okay. The other thing, if you don't have the epoxy stuff that you can do, is save, I know we all buy our gemstones, and they come in these little boxes called thumbnails, right? So they're already square, you don't throw them away, you give them back to the dealer, or you use them, right? Save a couple for yourself, and you can shape your wire around those as well. So in the case of using, your little pre-made epoxy dowel or your little wooden dowel from the hardware store, if I had 3 or 4 bands here that I was going to put around a rectangle or square stone, or if I just wanted to shape a rectangle or a square for some earrings or something, certainly you do this on your pad. I'm up here in the camera, but all you'd have to do is literally shape around your little block. Get the bottom there, fold these over onto themselves, and then right here, in the center, like we always do, and just turn these wires up. And then you can go forth to your pendant with this, right? And it's a nice little square, and you can always tidy it up, right? Okay, so that's one idea. And again, these are in all different diameters, so you can just save these little guys, right? The other thing is, if you're looking to make a rectangle, this is called a level. It's a small one. I just get it at the hardware store. They probably come smaller than this. But at the end of it, hopefully you can see it, is a very nice rectangle shape. So it's about 2 inches by 1 inch. And so I could certainly use this form to make a rectangle similar to what we did for our rectangle pendant, right? But if I needed a rectangle, hopefully you guys can see this, I could form it, you know, to the end of my level and just use this. Certainly you would do it better than this, but I'm just trying to show you, you know, what you can do. Ooh, and I'm under the camera, so it's a bit tight. But I would just take this level, the rectangle end of it, to help me shape my wires. And you'd certainly have to, you know, press it all nice here. I bent my stuff, but you get the idea. And then up here I could just cross them. The same as using that small dowel. This is large, but you know, if I had a nice big huge stone, that might be the frame that I need, right? So there's an idea, a level. These come in different sizes too. This one's probably kind of big, but you can buy a smaller one. And if you don't want to do that, the other rectangle is your toothpick plastic, right? So I could take this, I'm going to just straighten this one back out, and I could also just use the edge of this to shape my wires. I didn't straighten this back out, but you get the idea. And that gives me a nice little rectangle as well. Happy accidents there, huh? Little bump. And then turn these rails up. And that's about the size we used to capture that stone. I know you're all wishing I had given you the toothpick trick with the stone, but you know, this way you can go back and revisit. Okay, and now you know how to shape them by hand, but now you know that you can get, you know, find objects in your house to help you as well. So the other shape, alright, so I'm starting off with two 20 gauge round soft copper wires. These could be sterling silver as well. And they're both at 10 inches long, maybe 11. And I'm going to shape them into a slender rectangle for my earrings. I actually think I'm going to do this one. Okay, I'm using my little epoxy square that I made, or a rectangle that I made that I use for dowels that I spoke of in the last video. You could find little pieces of wood that are 1x1s or 2x1s from the hardware store and just cut them down, small dowels. Alright, so to shape my metal, I'm going to get to the approximate middle of them, and I'm just going to do them together. I'm going to brace at the end of this block, and I'm just going to turn these wires straight up the side to help me shape them. Just hold them here at the bottom, because when you shape the other side they're going to want to push out a little bit, and that's okay. Oh, I'm trying to get my hands out of the way. So you can kind of see that. And up here at the top, I'm going to shape them a little bit better. I'm also under the camera, so forgive my wiggliness. You want to stay level on your block to make them, you know, make sure that they're the same size each. I'm just squishing the bottom a little bit to get them a little more flat. And up here at the top, making sure that I'm flat against my block here. Up here at the top, I'm just going to cross them over the block, over my dowel. And at the approximate middle, just lift these, get your fingers up here near the top, lift them at that corner slightly, and you can either measure or just kind of eyeball the approximate middle. Raise it off the block slightly. Turn your corners up. give a little pinch. And now you have two nice rectangles. And you just make little adjustments and square them up a little bit, but they're even and they're ready for you to make cute earrings from. Hey members, welcome back. So I want to show you some things about shaping. We've been making these darling little earrings, and a couple of weeks ago I made a rectangle pendant for you guys, and I showed you how to shape the wire all kind of manually with your pliers and with measurement, and that's a good way. But for earrings and such, well, and even for pendants, but let's talk about the other kind of dowels that you can use. So I've shown you in the past that you can go to the local hardware store, and for very reasonable money you can buy a bunch of these already rounded, beautifully shaped dowels. They come in about 3 feet, and I just cut them down, you know, to about 3 inches, and then I have dowels of all different diameter that I can use for bales or round cabochon, etc. Well, what about squares and rectangles? It's good to be able to measure like we did, but you know, I don't know if everyone knows you can use wood comes in squares and rectangles. So you can go to the local hardware store and you can buy strips of these little pieces of wood, or if you're a very fine and talented woodworker and you have a bunch of scraps laying around, you can cut them down to these 3-inch, you know, I like 3 inches here, just because it's easy for me to hold on to. And then you know, here's our pendant rectangle almost perfectly. I could find it and probably put it back up here, but you can see that already, right? And then here are some rectangle earrings, right? Maybe you needed to shape some earrings. You know, I could use this when these two are close enough to a square that I could use either of them for a square, right? So you can get really creative with your dowels. You don't always have to, you know, buy the jeweler's metal set, because they make them, right? And you can get them. But I want to show you also my Bic trick for making long slope ear wires and ovals. This, you know, I hope Bic doesn't mind. So first of all, if you're a fire user of any kind, I use incense and candles in my studio, so I got tons of these laying around, and rather than throw them away, you can save them after they're empty and use them a new way, right? You can use them for dowels. They're pretty sturdy, and certainly don't use them full. Be safe and use them empty. And Bic makes them in 2 different sizes. There's a smaller one, I don't have it, but it's about the size of this inside one here, and that makes a nice small oval. And then there's other kinds of lighters out there that are different shapes too. So when you get done using your fire in your various ways that you can use fire, then you can save these and you can use them for your jewelry. So they make the Bic curve here is the perfect long slope earring hook. I use these to shape these long slope earring hooks, and they have a beautiful perfect curve here for the ear, and then they have a nice, you know, it's just a nice length if you want to make a longer, more open ear hook. And it also leaves you the opportunity for design on this long slope as well before the business of the ear goes in. So you have plenty of space on this one to add beads or add some wire even, right? They make a beautiful earring. And using the same technique as I used to make Edgar, right, rather than twisting and hammering the loop, I just started with one wire, made the loop, turned itself around like an earring closure, left one stem of it long for turning up my bead, and then making my curls, hammering this, and then I can put a smaller hook, you know, into this since it's such a long dangle bead. Or if I wanted to decorate all the inside of this with some more wire, some add-on wire, this is a beautiful pendant as well. So maybe I made some earrings as Edgar, and here I'm going to show you a different style. I just made these, ooh, we're out of focus. I just made these, you know, same way as Edgar, but I twisted more, and I made them more of a oval teardrop shape, applied the same catch to the bead without the curlies. And I put some short hooks on those, but then I used my Bic to make a nice, you know, big pendant. And I can do the same, just add some jump ring up here and a chain, and there you go. Alright, so then you have a nice set. Okay, so I see my focus is way down here. Sorry guys, but I think you get the idea. So if I wanted to make some earring hooks that were rectangle for any reason, you know, using my little wooden dowel here is another way that I could have done that, right? If you don't have these, if you're a toothpick user, I use these for jewelry too, right? You can get them at the dollar store or wherever. And so here's a beautiful rectangle, and here's another beautiful rectangle, right? And here, you know, well, that's just two beautiful rectangles. I probably wouldn't, this is so large, unless you had like a big square stone or a big rectangle stone, then actually you could even, you know, use this to shape a big rectangle for your nice hunk of turquoise or something, right? Or your 3 crystal sticks, okay? All right, so that's another way to shape wire. So I'll just make a quick demonstration, quick and easy here. So to make these long slope earrings, you're going to use 3 inches of wire, and I have 3 inches of 20 gauge round soft wire here. And I'm just going to cut them even here at the ends and make sure that's nice and clean. I'm going to go ahead and take my round nose plier and just make the small loop at the end by turning it all the way around the dowel. For my earring to hang on. And then I'll take my nice empty Bic Lighter Now jewelry dowel, jewelry earring shaper, and I'll get to the middle of my wires here, just holding them together. Put your thumb on the curve and then just bend these 2 wires around the lighter. Kind of pinch them together a little bit here. Make sure that you are center, so I'm looking to the center here and making sure that my loops, you know, land in the center there. These 2 little back bits, I'm just going to take them and turn them out slightly. Just get them even. Or you can do them one at a time. And just do a slight back bend on them. You'll have to sand and file those ends and make sure that they're clean. And then I like to skinny them up just a slight bit together. Just past those 2. Whoop. And that makes a nice earring hook, right? So now we'll hammer the action of the hook here that has to hold its shape and down the long slope. I actually give the rest of it a bit of a tap as well, just to harden the whole thing up, since it is a long earring. Okay, so let's get the bench block out. It's going to want to open up as soon as you strike this curve. So I like to just start by holding them together down here. Take your hammer and just do a nice tapping on the end of that. And then just continue to come down. Metal. This is the front face of the earring. So I'm just going to flare it just because. And then I'm going to taper down a little bit. And not flare so much, but hit for hardening. On the back side here, because it's so long and I want it to hold its shape, I'm also just going to give it, you know, a slight tapping for hardening. You could also throw these into the tumbler. So with this one, I turned my hooks out. You notice the option also is you can turn your hooks in, right? If you wanted to do that, you would just bend over the lighter and then turn these in afterwards, okay? If that little bump right there bothers me, I can get my flat pliers or I can get my nylon jaws. I can just give it a slight tap right there. And get rid of that little bump. You know, open your wire, actually do it this way. Open your wire a little bit so that you have more clearance. And then just tap right there. And that makes it very nice. Okay. Now when I go to put my earring in there, let me get one here. Hold it down here. Open the hookup brace right here because it's long sloped, long wire. Get your earring facing the correct direction that you want it. And then close the hook back up. Hold here and fold back up. Give it a slight pinch right there. Okay? And you can do this if you're, you know, also with your nylon jaw. Give a nice big squeeze right there for pressure hardening after it's closed back up. Okay? And that is so beautiful. That is such a beautiful earring. Okay, thank you, Bic Lighters. I am not an affiliate. I should be. They should. I'm probably making the best jewelry commercial for them, but I just want to help you out. And it's a nice upcycle, right? Because we use fire in a lot of ways, and rather than throwing that into the dumpster, you can use it for dowels, and they have different shapes. So of lighters, not just big, to make it fair. So to get rid of that little bump, I'm going to hold my loop and just turn it out. Then I'm going to use my flat pliers or my bent nose, and I'm just going to give that little bump a tap and straighten it back out. So I'll just get my other earring, get it hooked in, close my ear wire up. If there's a little gap, tap it closed. Get your nylon jaw, give a nice pressure squeeze on that earring, nice and flat. And that's beautiful. I didn't hammer this one yet. If I wasn't going to hammer it, the reason I didn't is because I want to show you it still needs to be hardened. This won't hold its shape without some kind of hardening. So if you don't hammer these and you prefer to leave them round, get your nylon jaw out and pressure harden all along this wire. Squeeze, nice big squeezes. You know, don't change the shape, but nice big squeezes. Nice big squeeze all the way down the frame. Nice big squeeze. And you could even do this after you hammer. And you'll feel that hardened that up a little bit. It's probably not as hard as, you know, it should be to hold its shape up here. Right here, because that's got to go in and out of the earring. So just keep that in mind if you make these long ones. You know, maybe squeeze up here with a metal plier, but you got to harden that. Alright? So I'm going to just hammer mine to make them even. So I'll open up my loop. close it back up so that I have a nice shape for my hammering. Gonna tap that slope. Make sure to get that little dent out. That's a nice shape. So now I'll take it to the bench block. I'm gonna hold my loop and my end, tap the curve, tap and pull out, tell the metal where to go, right? Then I'm going to travel down the front slope of the earring. Don't get your finger. These are not death blows, these are just taps until you see the metal flatten. And I'll flare it right there just for design. And then I'll tap a little bit down here and taper in. And give the loop a little tap for hardening. Then down the back end as well, just little taps for hardening. Okay. You can throw this into the tumbler if you have a tumbler, and that'll harden it even further and polish it up for you. If you don't have a tumbler, you know, the next business is to polish this up, which is, you know, it can be a bit of work, but you know, just get after it with your sunshine cloth, dip it, make sure, this is copper wire, so I always dip it into the sealant, make sure to seal all the metal, and certainly you file this little end before you do all that. Okay, so that is another beautiful earring wire. And then you treat all of this metal with, you know, the cleaning before you add any little beads or any little decoration here, okay, if you want to add decoration there. So I'll put my other earring back on here. I'll close this long slope earring up, tap that with my nylon jaw right there, and that is so cute. These are so cute. Okay, so now you have nice long slope earrings for your beautiful Edgar earrings. The next pair of earrings I'll show you, which will be a different design in a different video. They're called Casey. I had a cat named Casey once. So anyway, you look for those at the next video. Enjoy these earring wires, and let's go to a different shape. So now, if I wanted to make rectangle earrings for some reason, and people do that, we make rectangle earring hooks. I have a little piece of wood here. It's a perfect rectangle size. I would say that's probably 5 millimeter by 3/4 of an inch. So 5 millimeter by about 20. It can be any size. So I'll get another piece of 20 gauge wire, because that's the wire that I like to use for earring hooks. 20 gauge, it goes into everybody's ear. You could also probably use 18 gauge. And I will just take 2 pieces, and I'll get them about 5 inches long. So I've got 2 pieces of round 20 gauge soft copper wires, and they're about 5 inches long. 4.5 inches long. They're 4.5 inches long. They could be 4 inches long. And I've got my rectangular piece of wood. I'll just hold it right here in the middle of these wires. Keep pressure right here. As you turn them across around the wood there, you've got a nice soft rectangle starting. You have to keep pressure on the bottom because it just wants to loop when you do this. They're skinny. Okay? Take the one pair and turn them over the dowel. Press down. That's pretty good. Turn the other one over the dowel. And now you can give, finger pressure and just make sure that you have no bubbles and you have nice lines. And when you're ready, I'm just going to show you these. You've got two nice little rectangles for earring hooks. Let me just put them back on here real quick. Or for frames, whatever you want. Actually, maybe it won't go back on now. So for earring hooks, I need one side that's going to go through the ear, and I need the other side that's going to actually be the hook. And then this is going to lay in the ear, right? If you feel like you need a bigger loop, you can come out further. But I'm just going to cut them right there at the edge of my earring. And then you need one side that's going to go into the ear. Ooh. You could have also marked these with a Sharpie marker while they were on the block. Just going to cut them right there, nice and even. And what you get out of that are these two little open rectangles, okay? This is your hook. So with my round nose plier, I'll just take this all the way around. Then I have a nice a rectangle earring hook. And I'll do the same with this one. Take my round nose plier. Don't change the shape of your rectangle. Just get the loop in there. And now you have some rectangle earring hooks. And so down here, I always like to turn out the last couple of millimeters there also, just to help it catch the ear. Sand and file these ends, and then certainly we need to hammer and harden all of this. So same thing. I'll get my bench block out. I'm going to hang on to both sides of my earring. Going to hammer the top for hardening, and since this is the front of the earring, and because it's a little bit longer, I always like to give this whisper of a tap to all of it. So now I have a nice sturdy earring hook that is rectangular, and I can add my little bit down there. Okay. My earring bit. I'll just do this side. And now you have rectangle earring hooks. Same thing. Add your earring, close those little bits up, and then you have a nice front facing for any design you might want to do. So the earrings, will be facing this way. Okay. Now if I wanted to do a rectangle with the ends going up this way, I didn't use this bit of wood for this one, but I'm going to use it for the next example, and I want them going up this way. I could sew beads across here, so cute, and I could make these two loops, and those would be earrings, wouldn't they? So same thing. I'll get a couple of pieces of 20 gauge wire. I've got two pieces of 20 gauge wire, and they're 4 inches long. These could be scrap as well. They could be 18 gauge as well, but 20 gauge is my standard ear hook metal. So I'm just going to snip the ends off, make them real clean, If I wanted to make little rectangle earrings, same thing. Come to the middle of the wire, in the middle of your dowel, put finger pressure there, and just turn your metal around the dowel. Nice and clean. Make sure that you're level. Meaning, you know, one wire we're not totally sloped. They're pretty much next to each other here when they come down at the top, and that way you know you have a nice even shape. Okay, just like that. And then before you take it off the dowel, if you're going to turn this into a little rectangle earring and you just want a loop, you only need one piece for the loop. So I'm going to work these together. Before I take it off the dowel, I'm going to raise a pair, and I'm going to approximate the middle right there. And I'll take my pliers and just do an upturn. I'm a little bit in the camera, so it's hard for me too. And just turn them up, just like that. Okay. The second one is going to, you know, be what goes around. So that doesn't need to do anything, right? So take them off the dowel there, and you have some nice rectangle earrings. It'll separate a little bit here at the top, that's why they don't look rectangle, but you know, when you wrap it, it will. If you want to use the dowel to help you wrap it, then do one at a time. So I'm going to put it back on the dowel. I'm going to hold it together up here at the top. Make sure that I'm flush at the bottom. Here is my stem, and here is my wrap wire. So I'll raise the wrap wire slightly. I'll make sure that the stem wire actually is down on the block. I could get that a little bit closer. I can do that just by taking my plier and giving a nice gentle squeeze right there. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's center enough. And now I can take this wrap wire, come all the way around the stem. If you can do it with your fingers, you know, try to get it close like that. If it's difficult, then take your plier, get your other fingers out of the way once you make that curve. Get your thumb out of the way. To help you close it, take it this side and bring it all the way around the rectangle. Pinch it up here. Okay, so you have a nice wrap. It's a clean neck. And now all you have to do is trim this little bit. Don't trim anything else. Get in there with a very narrow plier and snip. Right there. I mean a narrow cutter. And then now get your narrow plier and tap that end nice and clean. To make your loop on the top of the earring, all you have to do is bend your bar and make a closed loop. And then we can, you know, take that to an earring hook. Okay? Or you can make this the earring hook by just bending it all the way back, right? I would have left that maybe a little longer if that were the intent. So let's do the other one. So this one wraps this way. So this one, because I made them together, is going to be, it won't matter, but if you want them completely opposite, you have to flip over the stem and get this one going to the front. Just reshape everything. Put it back on your dowel. Squeeze everything back together. Look to to make sure your stem is where you want it. And I adjusted the other one a little bit, so I'm going to adjust this one slightly. It's not a huge deal. Okay. Raise this one a little bit. You don't get too much leverage with that stem, so try to just get as close to it as you can with your fingers. Get a nice plier to help you get around the bar. Okay. Take it off your dowel. Compare your earrings. Very cute. That's pretty good. And then I'll trim this. Try to cut with kind of a downward slope so that when you pinch it back, it's a little more flush than just a blunt cut. And just tap around the neck, nice and clean. Now you have two rectangle earrings that are wrapped in mirror fashion. And then you can reshape a little bit if you want to, or take it to the block and do the hammer. So I'll pull my bench block out. I'm not going to hammer that bit there because, you know, I don't want it to sever off my stem. So all I need is the little body that hardens it up. You know, my favorite small hammer is the riveting hammer. It's not used for this purpose, but it's great if I want to get like that tiny shoulder right there. Look how small that is. It's a little harder to use. It'll dent your wire a little bit more if you don't strike it right on the head. If you angle it, it'll dent your wire, but it's really great for these tight little corners like that where you just barely need to tap it, but you want to miss the knot. So that's my tricky hammer. So anyway, there's that. So I'll hammer this other one. I guess I did hit that head just a little bit, and that's okay. If you hit it a little bit, it flattens it out, and that's kind of nice, but don't strike it too much because what happens is that you'll sever this wire. It could hammer through. So since I accidentally hit it, I'm going to go back to this one and hit this one. Just a couple of soft taps. And there you go. Nice rectangle frames. If you want to leave these stems as the earring hooks, sand these ends down. You can do them one at a time. You know, get out your dowel that is your favorite earring hook size. And that's, you know, this one for me, it's about 6 millimeter, I think, or 8 millimeter. Sorry, 8 millimeter. Since the wire is short, I'm going to get right up against the earring and just bend the back down. Just like that. You know, this should be a little bit longer, maybe about another 1/4 of an inch if you're doing it this way. I just wasn't planning on leaving that on there, but I wanted to show you that you can, and that's, you know, certainly how you would do these, just like that. They were just a little bit longer. This would tend to fall out of the ear if it's too short. So anyway, that's that way. What I intended to show you was to make a loop up here if you're going to do a dangling earring. So I'll find, you know, the slope here. The arm goes to the left, so I'll bend my hook to the right. And this is just to stay consistent. If I didn't do this style and I was going to do this loop, let me straighten it back out. You'd hammer that, you know, same thing. Okay. So I'd find my front slope and I would turn in the opposite direction. Okay, and now these only need to be, I would say, about 1/2 inch. So I like to just cut them together. Put them together. Line them up. Cut them down so you've got about 1/2 inch on each of them. And then you can take your round nose plier, and the loop doesn't need to be too big because it's just going to go through the earring hook. And just make yourself a little hook up here, a little loop. And it doesn't need to be wrapped closed unless you're going to put some weight in there. If you're just going to do, you know, lightweight earrings, I wouldn't worry about closing these up. This is 20 gauge wire. So, you know, just that closure is enough. You wouldn't need to wrap it again. And so now you have two nice little dangling earring frames, and you can put beads in there. So that's that. And then you would hook these, you know, maybe you put these onto your rectangle ear wires we just made. Open that up. After I decorate my earring frame, I can put it on my rectangle earring hook. So if you're going to join me for a members live stream this weekend, I think on Saturday we're going to do a bunch of earrings for the fun of it. Show you some different versions of Edgar, but also just some other styles that I might surprise you with. And I hope you enjoy that. Made some beautiful earring hooks and earring frames using objects that you can find around your house or that you can get from the hardware store easily. And now maybe when you look at some other things before you throw them away, see if you can use them. I will see you guys for the next time. I hope you enjoyed that.